Windsor, a quintessentially English town in the home counties. I grew up here and I teach at my old school. I play rugby for the local team and I drink in my local pub. My name's Ashwin Colin Bardwaj and I've lived here all of my 27 years. But my dad, Nick, was born in the Punjab and he moved here in the 60s. He came here in one of the first waves of immigration, and the life he created was nothing like what he left behind in Delhi. But what makes this story unique is how different his life was to what his peers were developing down the road in Southall. This is where he spent much of his time. After Windsor's first fish and chip van, he owned and ran bars and restaurants. And like many Hindus, he smoked, he liked to drink, and he loved beef. He was a much admired and central character of the local community. And for me, growing up in a restaurant and bar with all the excitement and fun it entailed, more than compensated for any gaps in my cultural knowledge. I didn't know how much Indian culture I was unaware of, as I rarely came into contact with it. When my dad died 5 years ago, my uncle told me that, as my father's son, it was my traditional duty to take my dad's ashes to India and immerse them in the River Ganges. But with that ritual being so unfamiliar to me, and with Windsor having been Dad's home for so long, I wasn't sure if that was what Dad or I would have wanted. I came to see it as a fantastic opportunity, and it made me start thinking about what my dad's heritage meant to me. I've been digging into stories of my father and the British Indian link as a whole, and I've learned about the enormous cultural and historical wealth of India and how much I've missed out on in my childhood. I'd had some contact with India, and aged 18 I'd gone exploring there. I'd visited temples, I'd worn kurta pajamas, and I'd stayed with family. I learned that my surname roughly translates as horse-riding warrior priest, and that my first name means strong horse. I felt mildly proud of India's heritage and achievements, and Indians kept telling me how Indian I was. But I always felt like an outsider there, something I've never felt back home here in England. But even I've picked up Indian flavours to my behaviour. The way I eat, the way I dance, and a love of brightly coloured clothing. But what is British Indian identity? As I delved deeper into British Asian culture, I discovered a fascinating and unique subculture that's influenced Britain more than you might think. Chicken tikka masala is a metaphor for how Indians have adapted and come to be seen as a cherished and essential part of British society. Depending on who you ask, the chicken tikka masala was invented in Glasgow, or Leicester, or according to my dad, Windsor. I'm going to follow my father's journey in reverse. Starting in Southall, England's Little India, then Delhi, former capital of the British Raj, and the Punjab where my ancestors were horse lords and priests. I'll then head north to the source of the Ganges in the Himalayas and follow the hippie trail down to Haridwar. It's a town of ancient ritual where the haze of incense and clanging of temple bells fills the air. I want to show that India is a country with a truly epic cultural and spiritual knowledge, that India is more than just curry and slums. But I also want to look at the fantastic ties between India and England. They gave us polo, we turned it into a sport of the elite. We gave them cricket and they turned it into the most spectacular sporting revolution of the new millennium. All of that is going to be challenging and exhilarating, but the final part of my journey is going to be the most poignant. That's when I'll be on the Ganges to perform my duty. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it, but I'd like to think that my father would be proud to know I've taken the time to understand my Indian heritage. I'm going to say goodbye to my father in the Indian way and complete his cycle of life. This journey was initially about me finding out more about who I am, what my Indian heritage means to me as a British boy of Indian blood. But at its heart, it's a story of identity. The identity we feel for the land we're living in, but for many of us, for the land where our families have come from.